Welcome back to the Creative Business Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Jane Bellante, and today's guest isn't just someone who teaches transformation, she actually embodies it. So, Mary Lou Rodriguez is a first-generation Mexican-born entrepreneur who grew up working in the fields as a child, surviving abuse, addiction, scarcity, and silence. And then she completely rewired her identity from the inside out. She actually went from 16 cents in her bank account to building a 7-figure personal growth company. But her story isn't really about strategy. It's about safety. It's about self-permission. And it's about finally letting go of the patterns that keep success at arm's length, no matter how hard we work. So in this conversation today, we're talking about what it really means to heal, to stop performing, to stop proving, and to start allowing the life and business that's already waiting for you. So whether you are a burned out entrepreneur, a creative soul who keeps second guessing herself, or someone who knows you're meant for more but can't quite feel it yet, this episode is your invitation to come home to yourself. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Creative Business Mindset Podcast, the show where creativity meets strategy and mindset meets success. I'm Jane Bellante, artist, coach, and creative entrepreneur, here to help you break free from self-doubt, clear limiting beliefs, and build a business that aligns with who you truly are. Each week, we dive into the mindset shifts, visibility strategies, and creative breakthroughs that help you turn your passion into a thriving business without burnout, overthinking, or perfectionism holding you back. If you're ready to step into your power, create with confidence, and grow a business you love, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Mary Lou Rodriguez. I'm so excited you're here.
Hi, Jane. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful, beautiful intro. And thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know I love you. And for anybody that does not know, Mary Lou is my coach, and she has helped me so much. So it's really my pleasure to bring you here. We are live right now in the Limitless Creators Hub, and you actually can listen to the replay on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or you can watch the replay on YouTube. So thank you so much for being here. And do know that you can always ask your questions either live in the comments here or on YouTube as well. So I am excited to get started. So Mary Lou, why don't you tell people, and I have, a bunch of questions that I want to ask. But hey, Connie, I'm so glad you're here. Okay, wonderful. So why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So hello to everybody who's watching and hanging out with us. I am Mary Lou Rodriguez, and I work with the most incredible, amazing entrepreneurs who are so gifted and so talented at what they do, and yet they're struggling to hit 6 figures. They're struggling to hit beyond 6 figures. And I work with entrepreneurs who are doing everything right, everything right, and yet they're still stuck. They still are not able to figure out how to bring in the money. And so I love to teach people and to help them understand the blocks that are getting in the way. And it's not just limiting beliefs, but those are a part of it. But I love to help entrepreneurs understand what is really blocking them from the success that they truly desire. And so that's what I get to do.
And she's really good at it, by the way.
I love it. I love it so much.
So you have said that by the age of 8 that you already knew how to survive. Yeah. So I want to ask, what did survival look like for you as a child? And how did that shape your identity, as you grew up?
Yeah. So by the time I was 8 years old, so let me just say that my first memories are of being in the strawberry fields. And so I learned back-breaking work by watching my mom. And she taught me literally how to begin to pick strawberries. Like she taught me, it's like pull the bushes up and look underneath. And so I did, I learned, and all my siblings were there. So it was just part of my normal. That's just what I knew life to be. And then when I started school, kindergarten, or first grade, then it was just the summer times that we would go out, and my whole family, like we'd get up at 4 a.m. My sisters and I would sleep with our clothes on. We'd get up at 4, we'd get into the car and we'd go to the fields and we'd work. And so by the time I was 8, I knew that I could work. I look back now, but by the time I was 8, I worked like an adult.
Mm.
I worked an 8-hour, probably 9-hour, stint out there in the strawberry fields. And so during that time, I learned about life, and I learned about who I was, and I learned about who I wasn't. And I learned that money was for other people. I learned that I had to work hard for money. I learned that I was different because I was poor. I learned that, my mom was just like, this is just part of our, she didn't use this exact saying, but what she meant was this was our lot in life. And
Yeah.
so this is what we get to do.
Yeah.
So survival to me meant getting by, just getting by, because
Yeah.
that's what I understood. I understood that we didn't have enough, and that was going to be my life.
And so I think that you answered part of this already, but because you're a first generation Mexican born entrepreneur, how did your cultural background influence your drive, or and you just said how it influenced your beliefs about success, but how did that influence your internal challenges too?
Yeah, so I went to a predominantly Caucasian elementary school. So there was like 5 immigrant, migrant Mexican children. And
Yeah.
so right from the get-go of starting school, I knew I was different. I knew that I didn't fit in with all the other kids. They put us in ESL. I remember we had lunch tickets, and how embarrassed I was to always pull out my lunch ticket. So and then my parents didn't understand education. Like they just didn't understand what that meant. What they taught me was that I needed to be responsible. So that meant coming home from school and taking care of my younger siblings.
Mm.
And so that's what I did because my mom worked 2 jobs. And so struggle was a part of my life from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, especially the people that I coach or the people that I help, like creatives and solo female entrepreneurs, we really push through pain to sort of get ahead in life because that's what we were taught. And you just really spoke to that. But when did you realize that your ability to override your own needs was actually holding you back? Like you pushing through that pain, when did you realize that was what was holding you back?
I think I lived that way for decades. I think I didn't understand even what my own needs were, or what I did understand was that I was very, very unhappy. What I did understand was that I turned to alcohol to try to figure out like how to cope with these holes that I felt like I had in my heart. And
Yeah.
I didn't even understand why. I just felt so miserable. And I knew that there was trauma. I didn't even ever use that word. I just knew that there was mental abuse and physical abuse and sexual abuse. And I really did think that this was just my effing life, that this is just how it was going to be. I was going to be unhappy. And I remember thinking, in my 20s, I was like, oh, when I meet the right man,
Oh, yeah.
then when I get the right job, then when when I feel completely independent, then I'll feel happy.
Yeah. And then I'll feel worthy.
Yes. Yeah. Then
I
I will
think
feel
that we always, we do that where, oh, after this happens, then this, after this
yeah,
happens, then this. And it
yeah.
really is embodying the then
Yes.
now.
Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I remember when I first started this journey, Jane, I was like, I just want to be happy. When I first started like discovering Tony Robbins and Marianne Williamson and Eckhart Tolle, I was like, I just want happiness. What I really wanted was peace, but I didn't know that. What I really wanted was to feel like I was worthy no matter what. What I
Yeah.
really wanted was to know my value, my intrinsic value and worth, and that it had nothing to do with anything outside of me. That's what I really wanted, but I called it happiness because that's what
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
I thought it
Yeah,
was.
it
Yeah.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
remember the first time, I think it was actually Oprah's recommendation of reading A New Earth from Eckhart. Like, I
Yes.
had already been into like Hay House and Wayne Dyer and all of the things, right? But I
Yeah.
was still looking and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the key to my life. And I'm going to read this and everything's going to change, and
Yeah.
actually it did.
Yes.
When I picked up A New Earth and started reading
Oh,
it, my mind was blown.
oh, that's crazy. We must have been doing it at the same
I
time. Because that's how I found Super
know.
Soul
Yeah.
Sunday was how I found out about this is I was like, "What is Super Soul Sunday?" And
Yeah.
then I started watching it, and my mom was in a coma at that time, and I was taking care of her, and I remember I'd sit her up, and I'd be like, "Oprah's on, Mom," because I knew she loved Oprah, even though my mom couldn't respond. I
Yeah.
was like and so I learned about, yeah, Eckhart Tolle at that time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a small world.
Yeah, and that was like the transition point for me,
Yeah,
it was a new level of understanding, really.
totally,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally. Serious, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, one of the things that I love the most about your story, because everybody's got a story, right? But you actually went from 16
Mhm.
cents in your bank account to
Yeah.
building a seven-figure company. So,
Aw,
and I know that it's a big shift, but
yeah,
can you identify like what was the internal shift that
my
made that kind of like extreme change possible?
first, let me just say the fact that I understand what it's like to struggle for decades, I feel like I've encountered it's like every time somebody comes to me with a pattern or a problem, I know how to help them because I experienced so many blocks throughout my life. I lived in lack and scarcity throughout my life, throughout throughout most of my life. It wasn't until I was 45 years old that I began to understand that I'm living in a poverty mindset. I'm living in a lack mindset. But yeah, so the ability to really when I first started this work, this and when I say this work, I mean, my inner work and then becoming I started out as a hypnotist and I just wrote a story, an email about it today because the reason why I became a hypnotist was because my mom was in a coma and I wanted to hypnotize her to bring her back to waking consciousness.
Wow.
And that was like, oh, it was so crazy, Jane, because I didn't even plan to start a business really. I just wanted to learn hypnosis. And that was the time when Oprah, was had Tony Robbins on and she
Yeah.
had and I was learning about meditation, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I
Mhm.
mean, and so I became a hypnotist and when I started started my journey as an entrepreneur, I knew that I was meant for more. However, I knew that I could feel that in my heart. I could feel it. But the way that I thought, the way that I felt about life, it was it was everything that I had learned. And so I didn't know that the way that I was thinking was actually blocking my ability to break through. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And
Right.
so struggle, I was always on the struggle bus. I was like that was my life. That was what I knew. I was like so for me, that was one of the first awarenesses that I really had is how do I begin to change my mindset, my thinking, my scarcity, what I believed was possible. And it really started with understanding my thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. It did. I know everybody
Yeah. Yep.
it
Totally.
really did.
Yeah.
It really did because I could hear it after a while. I could hear myself like limiting myself, and
Mhm.
I didn't know it. I just did not have a clue. So, so
Yeah.
you had asked just about like what it was like in the beginning. That's what it was like. That's why. But when I took a picture of that 16 cents, I remember going, I'm going to take a picture of this because one day
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to always remember this moment. This
Yeah.
moment where I decided that I was going to completely change my life.
Yeah.
So the 16 cents really reminds me of who I was
Yeah.
and how I thought and felt about life. And so when I see that picture sometimes I get a little choked up because I go, "Oh my gosh, I've grown so much
Mhm.
from that woman." But the real shift started to really happen when I understood that I could become the woman that I always wanted to be. And I I thought when I first started this journey that money and success were going to be the things that filled the holes in my heart. So at first it was
Yeah.
happiness and I was like, "Okay, I can start," it's like and then I started in the online space in 2020 and I started having a lot of success and I thought, "Wow, I'm experiencing success and I'm enjoying it." But the holes in my heart still felt a little bit I was like, I'm now that now that I'm creating, this new incredible life, why do I still feel this way?
Yeah. I get that 100%.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
having a deep conversation. We're having a real conversation because the thing about it is I love to talk and teach about money. I do. I'm the first person to be able to like enjoy a real conversation about how to change your life when it comes to your wealth consciousness. And it's also deeper than that.
Oh, yeah.
It's also deeper than
Yeah.
that.
It
And
is, yeah, it is filling the holes.
mhm, it is. It is. And the work that I do and the people that I see, it's so beautiful because they come into my world and they're doing all the right things. They really are. They're like, I'm doing the mindset work, I'm doing the somatic work, I'm taking action. Like what is actually blocking me from creating more whatever, more success, more abundance, more, whatever the language is, more money.
Yeah.
And and these are the people that I love to work with because I get it. I can tell right away what some of the biggest blocks are that we can't even see because we're living life through our own eyes. We can't see our own blind spots.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't want to keep, I'll give
No,
you space to ask
it's so
questions.
good. Yeah, it's so good. And I see that we have a couple more people that have joined us live. Thank you so much for being here. So in your work, you talk a lot about uncovering like hidden fear and these survival responses that we don't
Yeah,
necessarily even know it's a survival
yeah,
response. It's just how we are. It's how we've
yeah,
been conditioned to be, right?
yeah,
So how can someone start to identify those patterns in themselves, especially when they feel like they're
yeah,
doing all the right things. Like, well, I don't get it. I'm doing all the things. Why
yeah,
isn't it happening? And that
yeah,
was me. That was me
yeah.
for sure, right?
Yeah. So part of this is that and let me just give an example and then we'll
Yeah.
talk about it. So if somebody knows that they're going to go check their bank account to see how much money that they have in their bank account. Now notice how I said how much money they have, okay?
Mhm.
So if somebody goes to check their bank account and they start to feel their heart, starting to beat, if they are starting to feel the adrenaline moving through them, they might call it stress. Okay. So if you become aware that you have a stress response when you're checking your bank account, that is a survival response. That is something that you learned early on, whether you know it or not. And so this impacts, it's like the way that you feel about your bank account, about money. So we look at these survival responses. I learned to have stress around money you know, I'm sure by the time I was 8, but I definitely remember an experience when I was 10 when the landlord came every month to knock on the door of the apartment duplex that we lived in. And I remember when my mom would be like, "Tell her I'm not here." And so I learned I would open the door and I'd be like, "My mom's not here." And I always felt like she knew I was lying. So I learned to have this stress and anxiety when it came to money. Now I didn't know that in my 20s, that I had stress when it came to money, but that was the connection. So we look at these types of connections that you have. They are survival responses so that you can begin to change how you feel about money.
Yeah. And that's so good. Because another thing that you do really, really well is that you help people stop self-sabotaging when they are starting to get close to success,
Yeah.
right? Because what a lot of us do not realize that we actually have a fear of success.
Yeah.
So why do you think success feels unsafe for so many people? And how do we start to get around that, to rewire that?
Yeah. One of the reasons why it feels unsafe to people is because we've never been that version of ourselves before. We've never been the millionaire version of ourselves or six-figure version of ourselves. So there's the neuroscience piece behind this where when you step outside of your normal, your familiar, your comfort zone. So whatever your relationship is currently with money, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it doesn't matter to your brain or your body. It's just what's familiar. And so if you start to change that and do something where you're starting to create more wealth in your life, that's your unfamiliar. So a
Yeah.
lot of times people will say to me, I want money to feel safe. And I say, but if you feel safe without money, that's your familiar.
Yeah.
When you have money, that's unsafe. Because it's you're unfamiliar. Isn't that crazy?
It
But
is
that's the
crazy.
truth,
Yeah.
and that's why people push it away. So anytime we've never if we've never been that version of ourselves before, of course, our brain and our body, there's going to be resistance.
Yeah. They're
And it
not on
goes
board.
they're not on board, and it goes back to that fear of success because of course we're not walking around going, I have a cap on how much money I can receive. Of course, we're not doing that, but that's exactly what's happening unconsciously. If
Yeah.
you have any kind of beliefs around how much, it's like we don't know what our thermostat is, and that's what I'm going to be doing at the challenge. I'm actually going to be walking somebody through to figure out what is the real number that you allow yourself to receive.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the truth of what that is so that you know. But that is, we have a ceiling, a cap on how much we can receive because there are fears. There's a perceived loss. So what do I mean by that? If you become the version of yourself that you've never been, and all of a sudden your business is, you've got a lot of creatives out there, your business is fully thriving, you're, selling your art or whatever it is, it's like your courses. And then you might believe that the freedom that you desire comes with a cost. You might believe that you lose time. You might believe that you're going to be busy nonstop. You might believe that it's hard. You
Mhm.
might believe that you're going to burn out because you've burnt out before. So a lot of people will not surpass their ceiling, but they won't know that it's discomfort around how much they can receive. What they do know is that they'll self-sabotage. What
Right.
they do know is that they'll procrastinate. What they
And
do know.
they'll keep saying like, "Why does this keep happening? Why does this
Yes,
keep happening?" And they're doing it
yes,
to themselves.
yes, 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 and it's not conscious. Again, a lot of this is unconscious. It's those survival responses. It's those automatic feelings that we have. We feel the emotions. The emotions come from our brain, but we feel the feelings in our body, and so we have this discomfort, and we don't even know that it's discomfort around our dream coming true. We don't even know that. What
Yeah.
we do know is, just the feelings that we have in our day-to-day life and how we show up. And I call those patterns, we have these patterns that protect us. And and so people who come to see me have been on the hamster wheel. That's what I call it. It's like they're on the hamster wheel trying to figure out how
Yeah.
to how to surpass their ceiling so that they can receive more.
Mhm. Yeah. And another thing that I love about your message and the way that you teach and that makes so much sense to me is, you've just been talking about success not feeling safe. Your message is that success should feel safe,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not something we have to perform
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
So, what would you
Yeah.
say to the woman who's constantly overgiving, overworking, and still
Yeah.
under earning? Because I really think that that is a huge part of
Yeah.
my audience.
Yeah. Oh, Jane, I mean, that's the perfect example of a survival response, overgiving.
Yeah.
It's like overgiving, burning out to serve other people. And it's not always, but it can be at a cost to our health, to our well-being, to our energy. And yet we do it because we fill in the blank,
Yeah.
bad, guilty, you know,
Unworthy, not enough. Mhm.
unworthy, not enough. Yeah, and so when I'm and remind me of your question, sorry, I meant to write it down just 'cause I
Oh, no, that's okay.
I can get carried away. Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah.
it was just like, what do you say to this woman, who,
Oh,
who's constantly overgiving, overworking, but still
yeah,
under-earning?
yeah. Definitely the first thing I would say is that success does not feel safe.
Yeah.
That's and let's break it down so that people understand what that means. That means there is some fears around again, around you creating the type of success that you truly desire. Yesterday, I asked somebody, "What is your definition of success?" And she said, "Well, it's, this many people signed up for my program. It's this amount of money in the bank." And I said, "Okay, close your eyes." So I had her close her eyes and I said, "Tune in to your body." And then I asked her the question again, and she's like, "It's hard. It's stressful.
Yeah.
It's sacrifice."
Right.
So my job is to help people figure out what is underneath their, it's like, what are the real fears? What are the real feelings underneath their dream,
Yeah, like where they're actually working from.
where they're actually working from? Yes.
Mhm.
And that's what I call their energy. So no matter how much right action they take, no matter how much strategy they take, their energy will always win out.
Yeah.
What they truly believe unconsciously will always supersede their their dreams or their actions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Until they rewire it, right?
Until they rewire it. Yeah. Yeah, and this whole, like I see it all the time where there's this undercharging, under-earning, over-giving, and my job is to help people feel safe, meaning another way to say it is to feel empowered, to feel embodied, that they are worth, that they deserve
Yeah.
to be charging what they truly want to charge.
Yeah. Right. And not giving everything away all the time. Really, I have so many people that will say, "Well, I want to do this class, but I'm going to give it away for free, so that I can get so many people on my email list." And, for
Yeah,
me, it's like, okay, so you're giving everything away for free all the time. And now you have all these freebie seekers on your email list. So are
yeah,
they ever going to buy from you anyways?
yeah,
It is just sort of rewiring that thought in their brain. Like, you don't have to give everything away for free.
totally. Yeah.
Michelle is saying this feels so close to home. And Michelle's somebody that I love and work with really closely. And so, yeah, I get it.
Yes, I do too, and I feel like that is one of the h the most challenging things for female entrepreneurs is around pricing and how over-giving, over-delivering. I mean, I used to over-deliver too, and it really like, it has to do with what's underneath that, which makes it challenging because it's a blind spot. Like, why
Yeah.
do you actually overgive? What are it's like, what is the fear around that? And for me, it was around I wanted people to like me.
Yeah. Same.
So
Yeah.
I would just give, 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 give,
Yeah.
and it came at a cost, right? Me, it's like burning out, me feeling exhausted, me feeling resentful because of all this stuff that I had been, it's like giving, 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 and I realized I'm like, this is not the energy in which I want to it exhausts me. It
Yeah.
was exhausting. And so once we can begin to understand why do people need to like me? And I was like, oh, okay. So for me, and this is part of my, and I know Jane's heard me talk about this before. For me, if people liked me, they wouldn't hurt me.
Mhm.
And so that's why I wanted people to like me because who knows what could happen in the online space, who knows who they, it's like so I moved through that by realizing that my power is not outside of me, it's inside of me.
Yeah.
And what matters is how I feel about the product or the service or whatever it is that I'm offering to people, that I'm inviting people into, and that it's worth it
Yeah.
because it's life changing, but this is the rewiring piece that has to happen. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And we honestly, the awareness is key for sure, because if you don't know that that's where you're working from, you'll never know that's where you're working from, right? So I think that is absolutely key. And
Yeah.
I do know, because I am them, I
Yeah.
just kind of went through it first, but the people that listen to me, that, subscribe to the podcast, all the things,
Yeah.
I do know that they're overgivers. I do
Yeah.
know that they're juggling so many different things. They're following trends, they're
Yeah.
spinning plates. They're on that hamster wheel that you just
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
And like for me, it led to not only full
Yeah.
on burnout, but it led to me being 99% blocked in my widowmaker artery. Right. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
it is truly just taking a step back
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
because it will always repeat
Yeah.
until it doesn't, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I meant to say this and I forgot but so those are symptoms. It's
Yeah.
not the problem. We think it's the problem because that's how we show up, but that's not the problem. That's what makes my work so powerful, is that those are symptoms to the problems, whether it's procrastination, whether it's undercharging, whether it's overgiving. Those are symptoms. And we look at what's underneath that so that
Mhm.
you can begin to shift it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because they will repeat everywhere you go. It doesn't matter what strategy, it doesn't matter what program you join, it doesn't matter. It's like, if you don't believe that whatever you're doing is impactful, or that, people will want to buy it, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's like, if you don't believe in yourself, you could have $1 million strategy in front of you, but it's not worth $1 million because you don't believe that it's worth $1 million.
Right. Your brain doesn't believe it.
No, your brain doesn't believe it. No. Yeah, and that's what we're gonna talk about at the challenge, or the accelerator. I'm calling it the accelerator
Yeah,
because
so talk about what that is. I
yeah.
don't know that I was going to put a link in, but I only have the link to the other one.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
yeah,
so we'll get that figured out so that you guys can sign up for this free accelerator
yeah.
that you're doing. But tell us what that is.
Yeah. So it's a 4-day event. It starts May 6th, and it's 1 o'clock to 2:30 PM. So for an hour and a half, you're gonna
And
come
that's
in.
Pacific time.
Yeah, Pacific time,
Yeah.
thank you. You're gonna come and hang out with me, and each day we're gonna talk about the biggest block, that 4 biggest blocks that I see when people are trying to create more wealth or success in their life. So if you're saying things like, I'm working harder, but I'm not seeing the results. If you're saying things like, I know that every time I get close to a breakthrough, something holds me back. Or the biggest one that I see is, I'm doing everything right, but I'm still not having the results. You definitely want to come and spend time with me, because I'm going to teach you the brain and the body, like how that can get in the way. Or let me say it like this: why your brain and your body are rejecting your dream, your money. And that'll be on day 1, where we have that discussion, where we're going to look at the biology, the physiology, the neuroscience piece, because this does matter.
Mhm.
And what do I mean by that is, like, we need to look at how your brain or your body might be perceiving your dream as a threat. But and so I'm going to walk people through on the experience, and they're going to pull out their own visions, their own intentions, and I'm going to walk them through an exercise so that they can see exactly how it shows up for them in their life. Because we don't understand. This is everyone, because it's automated. Like, how we think and how we feel is just a part of who we are. So we're on autopilot. So we
Yeah.
don't have these awarenesses. So I'm going to teach people, like, here's your dream. And then let's walk through what actually blocks you from this in your day-to-day life. Like,
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's on one of the days. The second day, we're going to look at the upper limit, like what your set point is at, like how much you can allow yourself to receive. And we're going to specifically talk about money. So we're going to look at some of the fears around, or hidden blocks around, you actually becoming that version of yourself. Like, what would it mean if you had $1 million? I know that I know that Jane would be off. I know Jane would, like, buy her Airbnb businesses, and she would be off and
I'd be
running.
flying first class, right?
Yeah, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But we need to look at, we're going to look at some of the costs that it's unconscious. You might be afraid that you might out earn your husband, or, who are you to out earn your parents, or whatever it is. So we'll look at some of those threads that can get in the way of you being a six-figure entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because it's possible. And everybody knows that it's possible, but why isn't it possible for them? And that's what we're going to look at.
Yeah.
And then on day 3, we're going to talk about the emotional patterns that we have around wealth and success, meaning, like, do you feel guilty for wanting more? Do you feel selfish for wanting more? Do you feel like everybody should have, um, $1 million? So we'll look at some of the emotional patterns that silently sabotage us from creating more.
And the worth part too, I think you're really good at, like, do you feel worthy of actually receiving this?
Yes. 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 And one of the first questions I always ask people is, what does worthiness mean to you? Because I want to know, like, do you really know what it means? Because
Mhm.
we have to have clarity around these words. So yes, are you like, do you feel worthy? And if you don't, let's look at why. We
Mhm.
do deep work. This is not a surface level
No.
4 days. No, it's not. It's not. Yeah,
No,
because
be prepared. Yeah, be prepared.
but it's also fun too. I'm I'm gonna take them through a visualization exercise of actually understanding the identity that you want to embody. And I
Mhm.
know that you work a lot on identity too.
Yeah.
And my gift is helping people really be able to see it in their minds and feel it in their bodies, like
Mhm.
understand what that energy really is. So we're going to look at, how do you activate a six-figure identity and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, because it's different for everyone.
It's different for everyone.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this, accelerator, this 4-day accelerator is free.
It's free. Yes, it's free. And you can purchase VIP if you want for $11.11. There's an extra 3 rewiring audios, but when you sign up for the challenge, you get an audio right away. I want people to start practicing, and there's instructions in the emails. But I want you to start becoming embodied before you even get to the challenge or to the accelerator. And so my audio is one of my favorites. It's I am already wealthy and abundant. So you get that just for signing up for the challenge. And then when we get to the 4-day accelerator, then I will like ask for, we'll take we're going to do a video on day 1, the day that they start, because I want them to just say how they're feeling on day 1. And then we're going to do a video on day 4, because you will not believe the amount of transformation that'll happen within 4
In 4
days.
days. Yeah, it is quick. It's quick.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when is this happening?
Yeah, May 6th.
May
May 6th through, let's see, May 6th through May 9th.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
um,
And I'll make sure I get the link in all the places. It'll be on the replay for Apple and
yeah,
Spotify. It'll be on YouTube, and I'll put it on these 2. We're live in 2 different places right now.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah,
using this in many places, but I'll
yeah,
make sure that the proper link is in there.
yeah,
Um, and I think just, for the final question
yeah,
today, you went from 16 cents to building a 7-figure business, and it's really rooted in truth
yeah,
and it's rooted in healing trauma.
yeah.
So we really do live in a world full of like perceived perfection and perceived like overperformance. So how do you stay anchored?
Yeah. I love this question so much, Jane, because I do the inner work. You know that I think it's so important because, and this is what I learned. I've had mentors that have not done the inner work, and you can tell, you can tell that they're not embodied, and that's okay. That's their journey. But I stay anchored by it's like I have my daily practices that I do. I have a coach that I work with. I have, it's like I just feel that it's so important to do the inner work so that I can stay in possibility, so that I can stay in yeah, in it's like, and the thing that I love the most about what I do is that I am real. Like,
Yeah.
I really am real.
Yeah.
I'm not coming off, and coming to the calls and saying, "Oh, life is so great and everything." And then the next day, 500 people signed up, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I talk about the truth
Yeah. And
because
that's why I really felt like magnetized to you because
oh,
you can see that in you, and other people
thank
can
you.
too. So,
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem is that it's that, um, it's it's inauthentic, and and so I wanna show up
yeah.
as my badass authentic self.
Yeah. Because what's the point otherwise?
What's the point? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I stayed anchored by doing the work.
I love that so much. And I hope that those of you listening in live or the replay or watching the replay on YouTube I hope you've really let this sink in because what Mary Lou has shared today, it really does go beyond strategy. And it's beyond, she doesn't give you like mindset hacks, right? It
Yeah,
really is the deep foundational work of becoming the version of you who no longer needs to hustle for your worth.
yeah,
And, she teaches you that you don't have to keep pushing. In fact, it's the very thing that's keeping you in the same place, right? You don't have to keep proving. She teaches you to feel safe being who you already are.
yeah,
So if you have heard something that cracks something open inside of you, this is your sign to stop abandoning yourself and sign up for this accelerator. Like I said, I will make sure the link gets in all the places. Um, because you will be amazed at what happens in these 4 days, especially around, the idea of money. Because Mary Lou is very, very good at helping you rewire your brain around money. And, she said that she keeps herself anchored in possibility. And, I always end my podcast saying you are 100% possible 100% of the time. And Mary Lou is, the person to help you rewire your brain around money and to really understand your own worth and your own possibility. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Jane, thank you so much for having me, and I wish I was able to find the group so that I could, say hi to everybody who was hanging out with us. What an honor it is to be able to share my story, and I just wanna say, like, for anyone who's listening, I believed that it wasn't possible for me for a long time, and I want people to know that no matter their past, no matter their bank account, no matter their addictions, no matter their traumas, no matter what, they can create a life that they truly love,
Yeah.
and I would love for them to come and hang out with me because they will step into it.
Yeah, they definitely will. All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And thanks for joining us live, everybody.